So this is the second part of my Terran versus Terran tutorial. The opponent I'm going against is just a random AI. It doesn't matter because the benefit of the MMM build is that it's good against all races. It's a very stable build. It's not the best strategy in the world because if your opponent changes up their strategy, you then have to change yours a little bit. But it is the backbone, it is the heart of the Terran army. Okay, so the build order is very simple. So at the start of the game, you want 4 SCVs. Now you have to keep an eye on your supply count because when that says number 9, this guy here is number 10. It's not showing him on the supply. Anyone past the first place in the queue doesn't get logged on the supply. So it's 4 SCVs at the start. That's for the optimal mining efficiency at the start of the game. And then you go into building your supply depot. The supply depot unlocks the barracks. You can't avoid it. So what I've done here is I've decided to build it, at the ramp, because this is how you wall off, essentially. This one little ramp is the only way for your opponent to get into the base. So Terran versus Terran, go for the wall, as I've always said. So whilst your supply depot is building, you actually want to build 2 SCVs because that's how much time you have. Actually, I'm going to slow this down. Let's go back a bit because I'm doing this in a very poor and inefficient manner. Okay. So let's start by pausing it. Slow the speed down to normal speed. Why not? Okay, and unpause it. So here we go. So there he is. He's going to build me a supply depot. Okay. So whilst he's building the supply depot, I queue up another 2 workers. You'll see them in a sec. Which will bring the population up to 12. Some people say food. I don't know why they say food. Maybe they play Age of Empires too much. But I say population because I play Empire Earth too much. Okay, so you build 2 SCVs whilst the supply depot is being built. And then this guy here, once the supply depot is finished, he unlocks, the barracks gets unlocked. Now, whilst the barracks is building, pardon me, you have exactly enough time to build 3 more SCVs, 1 refinery, and the supply depot. Now, the order in which you build these actually is very important because this is the only place where the Terran build differs. You can actually go for a refinery at 12, but that means you're going for a very, very Vespene heavy style. And the good thing about the MMM strategy is that you don't need as much Vespene as early on as you would other strategies, because your units are relatively cheap and the upgrades for your buildings are relatively cheap as well. So even going for even getting the refinery before you build your SCVs massively changes things because SCVs mine 120 minerals a minute. So for as long as you're building that refinery, trying to earn those 75 mineral back, you're losing essential mining time. Okay, so the barracks is complete. The first thing you want to do is upgrade your command center into an orbital command. This is very, 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 very important. No Terran in the world should never do this. There is no reason not to do this because the mule just gives you that much of an income boost. It is that important. Always get the income boost. So whilst that's happening, we want to build 1 marine. Now, generally speaking, with the MMM strategy, you want to be at 3 barracks at the 5-minute mark. Now, I try to rush things a little here, so I don't do it quite as efficiently as I could, but that's why I'm not a pro player. Yeah, I'm not the best, but I understand the strategy. That's all I need to know. Okay, now, you've noticed I've only got 1 miner in the Vespene geyser, in the refinery, even though I can have a maximum of 3. The reason for this is we only need 25 Vespene. And whilst we're building marines, actually let's slow that down a bit because you didn't actually see that. Yeah, that's my bad. I should have been keeping an eye out for it. Okay, so I only have one person in the Vespian geyser at the moment because we don't need a lot of Vespian at the start of the game. We only need enough right here to build a tech lab. And if I pause it, wait, no, not observer chat, you noob. Okay, so right here, the tech lab is 25 Vespian to build. What this unlocks for us is the Marauder, and that's the only reason we need it. Sorry, it's not the only reason. Wow, way to go describing the MMM build. It also builds the researches the stim pack. I'm gonna blame time on this one. Okay, so it builds the stim pack, which increases the Terran attack potency. It works on the Marauders, it works on the Marines, it doesn't work on any other infantry. And as I said earlier in my previous part of this tutorial, the fact that the Marines and Marauders both use the same spell means micromanaging your army is really dumbed down. It's the only spell you need. It's the only thing you need to worry about, really. And like I said, you can use the boost on the medevac, but most of the time you're probably not going to need them. Not if you're a beginner, because you're probably not going to react fast enough, or you're not going to know that you're going to need to use it, and stuff like that. But don't worry about that. Yeah, so let's continue with the show. Right, so there we go. And then up here, see how close we are? I even cancelled the marine because I just looked up and I was like, oh, I'm about to get it. About to get to 25. So what you're doing with your mineral then is you should be constantly building SCVs, and you should be using the mule. Like I said, I'm a little slow because I'm a little off because I'm trying to rush things. Here is something I have to mention which is very important. Now, because your expansions on your buildings, I don't know why I'm pointing at the screen. The expansions on your building built at the bottom right. Looking at the stream, I'm pointing down left. So for your sake, if I point down right, that's the direction the expansions are going to be built. So that means there are certain positions in the map that the Terran favour. So if we look down here, for example, here, if I was to build the barracks there, I would not need to move it to put that tech lab down. So this is something very important to think about, because it actually affects a lot of things. At a pro level, you don't want to waste time moving that building. So you can risk putting the barracks where it is now, but of course you then leave the wall exposed to attacks. Now, as we said earlier about harass strategies, that marine is perfectly capable. This map is Akalon Waste. It is really easy to defend. It's a very defensive map. As we can see, we can only get the Reaper up here and here over the wall. And here, the wall is just too high. No Reaper can get up that wall. It's impossible unless you glitch. Tell me if you manage to do that glitch. If it exists. Just so I can troll people. So yeah, that's why the barracks had to move. Okay, so you notice you'll be storing up a bit of mineral, because you can only build marines one at a time. Whilst you're building a tech lab, you can't build marines, so just build SCVs. And you should be working up towards your first expansion at this point. Now, at the 5-minute mark, you're supposed to have 3 barracks. So what I've seen Bomber do, and what I find works really nicely, is that you bring 2 SCVs out to build the extra 2 barracks. And once they're finished doing it, you send them into the refinery, because that's when you're going to need to start getting the extra Vespene. Because right now, you don't need to worry about Vespene as much. That's one of the best things about the MMM build. It's cost efficient. Very, very cost efficient. So what you should be doing is up here, you're waiting for 100 gas. So in the meantime, whilst you're waiting for that 100 gas, you can get a couple more Marines out, you can get a couple more SCVs out, improve your economy. If you haven't done so already, build your next command center, essentially. Like, I probably should have built the command center a little sooner, but I just wanted more units. I like having more units. But ideally you want that second command center up as soon as possible. When you watch professional play, they talk about a 2-base Terran, and you're going to see why. Because with 3 barracks, we're going to be able to produce a large amount of units really early on. And like I said, we don't need much Vespene. We're taking a full advantage of the Terran bonuses. You know, the pros of being Terran. The mule costs no supply whatsoever. It's not there. It doesn't exist. But you're just getting more mineral by having it, and then using that mineral in a mineral-heavy strategy. So it cascades. It builds a very strong strategy. This is how Terran is supposed to work. Imagine a world war. We send soldiers by the hundreds of thousands. These are humanoid. They work in the same way. That's one of the things I love about Blizzard. The strategy is a law. It works. Okay, without going too far off the track. So yeah, we can build a large amount of units really early, and that's what we're going to do. Because now that we have the tech lab, our next goal is the Stimpack research. Okay, I think the amount you're boosted by is about 25%. I could be wrong. It changes a lot when they balance the game. So we'll get the game rolling, just so you can see when that comes up. I think I do like slow down my macro a little bit because I'm like, must get Stimpack, must get Stimpack, must get Stimpack, just waiting for it. It's like the Stimpack and the Mule are massive. The sooner you get them, the stronger you are. Stronger economically and also stronger in terms of military. Because if you're getting an extra 25% out of your units, then with 4 Marines you've actually got 5. You're doing, not in terms of strength, but you're doing 5 times the damage. Sorry, an extra 100% damage on top with just 4 Marines. But it actually ramps up a lot because you get an attack speed boost, a damage boost, and a movement speed boost. It's sick. Okay, it says attack and movement speed, but I'm pretty sure it does attack speed as well. Okay, so whilst that's upgrading, yeah, you get your command center. What am I doing? Oh yeah, I'm getting the second refinery up. Now, I'm not too sure when you get your second refinery up. It depending on what build I'm going for, if I'm going to transist from this, if I'm going to change and go to a different strategy, I would get it earlier or later, but generally you don't need it because you just need Marines. Because whatever's going to come at you, the Marines are going to handle it, no matter what. If they send an Oracle at you, you're going to have the Marines. You're either going to have them in your mineral line, or you're going to have them in areas like this over here, just watching the corners of your base. What a lot of pro players do, and it's quite nice, is they put a supply depot there, because remember, supply depots grant vision, so you can use them to keep an eye on the corners of your base, so you don't have to have your Marines all bunched up in the same place. Okay, so what's happening here is I'm very early. At the 8-minute mark, you should have around 5 barracks. I don't produce too many Marauders at the start. I actually slipped up as well. Look at that Vespine, look. I haven't been paying attention because I feel like my macro is just going too slow. Because when I watch professional play and I look at the timers, I think, oh my god, they're doing so amazing at such a small amount of time. And I'm thinking I should be doing a lot more, and that's why I get a little work. So yeah, 8 minutes you want to go up to 5 barracks, and then at 13 minutes you should have 8. But I close this game up before then because you're about to see the full extent of the Marine Marauder medevac build. I don't need to play an entire lengthy match out for you to see its power. So the second refinery, you could probably do the same thing, build the barracks and move your SCVs in, but ideally you want your... Oh, did I say barracks? Your second refinery, you just want to shove your SCVs in there, because you should be producing a lot. So what have I got here? 16 workers altogether, and I can build mules. Yeah, call on mules. I do at some point when I finally get my act together. Okay, so you build your factory, and when your factory is complete, you stick a tech reactor on it as soon as possible. Sorry, not tech reactor, that's in the story. You build the reactor on it. I'm not sure why I kind of missed that out. I think I was trying to build Marauders at the same time. I also don't know. So what we're going to do is that little technique I showed you earlier, where you can switch buildings around. Because that's the optimal efficiency. Now, I think... if I build... No, I haven't even built Marauders, so I think I should have definitely built this refinery sooner, because you're supposed to have like the factory as soon as possible, possibly before I built these two. But like I said, after that, once you've got the orbital command, it varies a lot, because you get such an economical boost. You can mix the strategy up a lot, depending on if you want to add extra air, if you want to add like some weather mines into the composition. Weather mines are great for early defense. So here we are, we're switching the buildings around, and now this is it, you're set for the rest of the game. So what I would recommend is you group up your buildings. I mean, just watch, that factory's going to do nothing now, because we don't need it, it's not part of the strategy. So, medevacs, marauders, marines, go, 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 go. What I should have been doing is paying attention to these a little more, because this is probably the time I want them down. So once you've got your starport down, you then get your upgrades. Now, you can attack as soon as you've got your medevacs, because you've got that buffer, you've got that extra healing. It allows you to stay strong in the, well, not stay strong, but you know, endure the fight. So you don't really need to worry as much about you know, upgrades. That's one of the advantages of the stim pack, because your army is going to get an instant buff. But you got to remember that the stim pack damages your units, so ideally you don't want to use it until you got the medevacs out. There are going to be situations where your opponent decides to have a little poke at your base. You're going to have to use the stim pack to save your life. Sacrificing stim pack to save your life is a lot more, it's a worthy cost. It's worth throwing that 10 HP away. And you got to remember it's 10 HP off every single unit, except the medevac. So yeah, once you got your medevacs, it's okay to have a little scout around the map. This little army I've got now is actually a little bigger than you're supposed to have, so it shows I've been a little bit inefficient. Sorry. Scout the map, take Zelnaga towers for extra vision. Do what you got to do, basically, because you are combat ready. 1 second. Okay. Yeah, so quite literally, once you have stim pack, you are combat ready, and that's what you see some of the professional Terrans do. The second they get it, boom, for the attack. Now, there's a thing called a timing attack. Pulling this off requires a lot of knowledge of the mechanics of the game. It requires your build order exactly right, as efficient as you can possibly do it, because that's what it's based on, time. For example, the second stim is done, attack their base. Like, have your units outside, stim gets done, attack. Because you're going to have a massive attack boost. It is massive, because every single unit gets buffed. And then the next timing attack you could do, or I say next, ideally you want to aim for one or the other. When stim pack's done, or when you get your first 1-1 upgrades, which is these, basically. Because one of these is researching level 1 attack, the other is level 1 armor, so that's why we call it 1-1. And if we look at the unit here, he's currently 0-0. Right. Okay, so I'm supply capped at this moment, but I'm moving out anyway. I actually didn't even notice the Zerglings during the match, or even whilst the replay's going on. They just came up to me base, decided to attack, and failed. So yeah, I just wanted to close the match out at this point. But back on the subject of timing attacks, one of the other timing attacks you could do at the start is when 1-1 finishes. That requires a bit better Vespene management, because you want to get these as soon as possible. And the reason is because having that level 1 upgrade over your opponent is the same as having stim pack. So imagine you've got both. Yeah, you're just gonna steamroll over them, right? So here we can see it at work. Marines have a nice fire rate, Marauders can tank. Well, I say we can see it working, but this is against a very easy AI. But let's bring that back up to speed, actually. There's no reason why we should slow it down anymore. So what I'm doing here is attack moving, but I could talk about that a different day. That's a whole different subject. Go Google it or something. But yeah, the health drop, and look at that speed boost. See? Attack speed boost, movement speed boost. You just wreck everything. And what happens if they kill your army? Just rebuild it. Like, literally rebuild this composition. Marauders, medevacs, and marines. I'm going to pause it there, because the AI is going to tap out in a sec. So, one of the things that people will probably debate and discuss is this. The ratio of marauders, the ratio of tech labs to reactors. Now, the reason this is an important discussion is, of course, the barracks that have the tech labs can build marauders, the barracks that don't cannot, but they can build extra marines. Now, the cost of the marauder is 100 mineral and 25 S-beam. The cost of 2 marines is also 100 mineral. So you can build 2 marines at the same time you can build 1 marauder. So it stands to reason that you could have 1-to-1. Like, quite literally, like, when I say 1-to-1, like 50%. So half of them have tech labs, the other half have reactors. That's perfectly fine. But the situation could change in the game. So I would say you don't specifically decide to build however many of each. Because let's say you had 8 barracks, which is the number you should have at 13 minutes. You know, that number I don't have. Whoops. The number I don't have. Because sometimes, in the case of Protoss, you would go more towards the tech labs. Now, here's something interesting to point out as well. I can't actually show you there. If I move back a bit, maybe I'll be able to show you. Because the cost for the tech lab is cheaper than a reactor. Now, is that to say that the reactor is better? No, it's actually because in the early game, being able to produce that many marines is probably worse than a Zerg rush, because they're so versatile, and if they don't like wipe your opponent out in the first engagement, you can always back off and you just build more, and they're good throughout the rest of the game. They can shoot up. I don't know how else to say how amazing they are. So I generally like to have a 2-to-1 ratio. So I would go 2 reactors over tech labs, because, I mean, if you have more marauders, you're more tanky, but you generally have less DPS, because when you think about it, right, where's my army at this moment? Actually, let's speed it back up so I've got some marauders on the field. Okay, so in terms of DPS, let's ignore the bonus. So 10 damage per shot, and they fire at 1.5, so 1.5 shots every second. Actually, no, sorry, it's not that. That's in seconds. So they fire 2 shots every 3 seconds. Let's just leave it at that. They're like an awkward 0.86. So they can deal like 3 times as many shots, essentially. And that is 6 damage versus the 10. They're actually doing far more damage. They're doing like 18 damage. But you gotta remember that the Marauder, in comparison, has more than double the HP of the Marine. So they can resist that damage. They can resist those 3 shots really easily. So they can actually deal more damage on a 1-to-1 basis. But remember, you can get 2 Marines for each Marauder. So you're actually doubling the damage again. So that 18 then turns into a massive 32. Not 32, sorry, 36 per second. And that's gonna hit harder. That's gonna start giving the Marauders trouble. Yeah, but I just like the Marines over the Marauders because of that versatility. If you want to like have the Marauders soak up the damage, if you're gonna play like tactically in that sense, then yes, you want like more towards tech labs than you do reactors. And if you want, I mean, even if you build extra, don't worry about it. It's like if you have to suddenly change your strategy and you're like, oh no, no, I need to start building tanks. Just lift the barracks up that you don't need and just stick the factories in their places. Just don't worry about it. Keep you cool. And the same goes for the starports. Like I said, there was a match I had against my brother. I saw his battlecruiser, swapped my buildings around, boomf. His battlecruisers had no chance. Okay. Yeah, so the MMM build is solid. Really solid. It's not impossible to beat. So let's start talking about countering the build, because I've already said how amazing it is in a million different ways. If we think about the build, let's talk about when you're most vulnerable. Because this build order is actually quite economically efficient and time efficient, it's going to be hard to get the jump on a player who is going MMM, but it's also really obvious if they're going MMM, because if they're going into a Hellion Banshee rat, if you scout their base, you're going to see there's only one barracks. So that's going to give you two indications. Either there's another barracks hidden on the map, or they're not going for a Marine Marauder Medivac build, they're going to rush a harass strategy. So this is why the Terran should always build that wall. If I scroll back the clock, okay, let's keep an eye on the map. Unpause it, speed it up a bit. Not sure if the easy AI actually do this, but we'll see. Okay, so the easy AI actually hasn't done it. Right there. Okay, so yeah, so normally with AI smarter than easy, they'll scout with an SCV, a drone, or a probe. And every single player, Terran especially, around the 9, 10, 11 mark, they're going to send a unit out. So when you're building your supply depot, you actually then want to send a second SCV out of your base to scout theirs, because they're not going to have any defenses, they're not going to have any units, so you can literally have a little wander around their base. Depending on their strategy and how much of a dick they want to be, they're just going to attack you with the SCVs or probes or drones, because they don't want you to see anything. That's how you know they're being sneaky. But generally with the MMM build, you don't need to scout, because it can actually take down a lot of easy aggression, and I've been through that a million times. So yeah, scouting is really important, and that's why it's also important to get the wall up. This is actually the weakest point. I've explained before how the change in map is different. The barracks has 1000 HP. That little thing has next to nothing. It's a weak point, but it's stronger than having nothing there. And on the other side of the map, it's only the barracks there, and that's going to be a massive wall. So no drone, SCV or probe is going to scout you. Zerglings aren't even going to be able to pull the wall down. Why? Well, what's him? What's that? There's a Marine. So whilst a Zergling is trying to chunk away a 400 HP building or a 1000 HP building, you're shooting at them with Marines. They're not going to be able to break through. Then let's say your opponent is Protoss and they try something like, the Oracle, you're just going to shoot it down with Marines anyway. So this denies scout, and it stops any early aggression from a lot of rush strategies. Even a proxy barracks. Proxy barracks is like the only cheese a Terran can do. And this is why Terrans have had difficulty last year, but are doing well this year. Because they don't have a lot of versatility in the early game. The proxy barracks basically means that you're building an out-of-base barracks. So instead of building it there, when you send that first scouting SCV out, have a look at your opponent's base, and if you think you can do it, just build the barracks right outside the base. Literally, do it! But chances are, if you send the SCV whilst you're building the supply depot, he's not going to have time to scout and build it. So, it's risky. That's what cheese strategies are. So you can actually go from a proxy barracks into a Marine Marauder medevac build, because what you normally do is you plunk down your barracks, and then instead of expanding, you're going to use that extra mineral to build a bunker. So the only change in your strategy is, instead of expanding, you put 150 mineral towards an engineering bay, because that allows you to use the bunker, that unlocks it, and then you generally want to build a bunker on their natural, because you're going to get there before they do. You're going to build your barracks, say here or here. Some players would probably do it here. It's map dependent, but it's roughly like this region, because your opponent, he's not going to see that. Do you know why? Because he's going to send his probe, SCV or drone out to your base at the exact same time you're sending your SCV to his. So it actually works. Sorry, I've just realised I've gone off topic. So countering the MMM strategy. See, this is why it's really strong, because there aren't many ways to counter it. Early aggression doesn't work. We've established that a million times, right? Come on, Paul, concentrate. Yeah, so in a TVT specific matchup, countering the MMM strategy is literally tanks. That's the easiest way to do it. But remember, there's medevacs in the fray. So tanks alone are not going to do it. And for each tank you build, you're losing the opportunity to build Marauders. You're losing the opportunity to build Marines, because all that money in Vespene is going into a tank, and a tank is almost as expensive as a building. So you do have to be careful of that. In theory, the tank is going to trade massively, because he's going to kill more things than his own cost. That should happen. But like I said, there's medevacs in the fray. So your medevacs are just going to pick up your army, and they're just going to fly over the tanks, because tanks can't shoot up. That's why you have Marines with your tanks. So Marine tank beats Marine Marauder medevac without a doubt. But that doesn't mean the Marine Marauder medevac is dead, because the chances are, if your opponent has Marines and tanks, the tanks are going to have to keep up with the upgrades to your Marine Marauder medevac strategy. So they're going to have to spend resources on the likes of an armory, and they may end up putting resources into the mech upgrades. But a smart player wouldn't do that. They would see what their opponent is doing, if they're transitioning or not first. Oh, I hate it when this happens. I had it in my head. Yeah, so it means they're probably not going to have Marauders. If you go Marine tank, you don't need the Marauders, so you got to watch out for that. The Marines will shoot down the medevacs, without a doubt. But also because this, one of the things you also force your opponent to do is to be a little bit more defensive, because they know you've got medevacs. And what a lot of pro players do, it's quite funny how many times this actually works. They send a drop into the main base, load up some medevacs, drop them in the main base, and then when their opponent counters it, sends Zerglings, sends Marines, sends whatever to try and stop it, load everything back into the medevac, then drop off in the natural. Why? Because the army is in the main. No one's in the natural. It makes sense to harass it. So Terran drop strategy can be a real nuisance to play against. But like I said, it's all dependent on the medevacs. Medevacs get over the tanks, but if a full medevac gets shot down, you've lost everything. If it's full of 8 Marines, we're talking 400 mineral. And because you can only have 4 Marauders in there, we're talking, again, 400 mineral, but then 100 Vespene as well. And then let's not forget the cost of the medevac itself, so that's another 100. So it can be fragile in those situations. So to counter it, you also want a little bit of air support as well. So where we built the starport and then a couple of medevacs, to counter, you would build a starport and a couple of Vikings, obviously. where can you transition with this? Now, this is one of the problems with it as well. If you're devoted solely to the Marine Marauder, Marine Marauder medevac, then you're going for bio-heavy upgrades, which means your medevacs are still going to be weak. If you have spare Vespene, by all means upgrade the Terran mech. You will need an armory for that as well. But essentially, you're devoting so much into the bio that you will not be able to easily transition into other strategies. Having 5 barracks, however, is a nice deal because it gives 5 is like that magical number. If you had 8, you're going all in on the Bioforce, basically. So you're basically saying, I'm not going to invest into mech. But if you get 5 instead of 8, it could still go both ways. You should get to 3 in almost every strategy. I say almost every strategy because there's nothing wrong with going 3 barracks and then going into tanks. Because then you'll have a nice combination of tanks, marines, marauders, and then you can even build a medevac as well for a little bit of support. Yeah, so transitioning from 8 barracks, however, you've already invested a lot. And you're also investing into the upgrades, so you don't really have the opportunity to build like tanks and Vikings by the billions. And considering how long it takes to actually get your +1 upgrades, or 2-2 or 3-3, etc., it's a long time. So whilst you're slowly trying to build up your mech force, your opponent's already upgraded force, whatever strategy they were going for, is just going to steamroll over you. You're not going to have time to get the mech out if you need it. However, you will have the opportunity to get Vikings, but it just won't be strong. That's the problem, because they'll be weak, they won't be fully upgraded. So transitioning from a full bio isn't easy, but it's doable. It really is doable, because the other strategies generally are slower. So if you're good with your micro, you can try and slow your opponent down across the map to buy more time. You can do a little bit of drop plates to harass, but it's not easy. So the tech switch is a disadvantage in the MMM build. But what I've seen some players do is something called the 4M strategy. It's not massively popular, and it's to do with the whole transitioning phase. Because what you can ideally do is you can at some point swap your factory for one of the barracks that has a reactor on it and just pump out a couple of Widow Mines, and that's the 4th M. Marine, Marauder, Medevac, Widow Mine. M for mine, not Widow, yeah. So the way that strategy plays is similar to this one, where you have your small force of Marines, Marauders, and your Medevacs, and you move them out. Now, because you've invested a little in the Widow Mine, each Widow Mine you buy is equal to a Marauder. Why? Even though it's like 25 mineral to make, I think it's 25 mineral? So sorry, it's 75 mineral to make, it's still 25 Vespene, which is exactly the amount of Vespene you need for a Marauder. Okay, so, but the way you play with the Widow Mines is you have a small group attacking up front, but your army is not designed to destroy, it's not designed to take objectives. It's designed to poke your opponent, they send their army, and you walk back over your mines, which they can't see. And boom, 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 all hell rains down. This again is displayed in that MLG Anaheim match that Polt had against Hyun, because that's exactly what Polt did, because Hyun is great with his roaches. So Polt just, did I say Polt? Yeah, Hyun is great with his roaches, and then Polt just kited them back over mines, which wrecks everything. But it's a little tricky building the mines in, because it changes the timing of a lot of things, because you have to account for the extra Vespene you're going to be spending on the mines. So you're naturally going to have a smaller amount of Marines and Marauders. So that's another disadvantage there, because if you do try to adapt it, it's like just having the mines massively reduces the effectiveness of the Bioforce, because you don't have as much. So you could compensate by having more Marines, which means you'll probably decide to go more reactor heavy. But then again, as we saw before, the reactor costs an extra 25 25 Vespene on top of the tech lab. Just want to double check that. I've gone back too far. I've gone back way too. Oh no, there we go. Yeah. Move forward a bit so I've got the other barracks there. I just want to double check those numbers. Right, that's a nuisance. Come on! Alright. We'll get there. Yeah, so the reason that's important to note, because even if you're going to bolster it with a few extra Marines, you have to remember that each reactor you build, again, that Vespene cost is the same as a mine, and it's the same as a Marauder, so you got to equate it that way. Right, that was a long video. I'm tired, that's why my brain's decided to derp, and also, what have we got? There we go. And yeah, my throat's going a bit croaky now. It's the first Starcraft tutorial I've ever made, and I hope that information you can absorb it easily. I know some of the stuff I went on and repeated massively, but bear with it. Just go through it again, practice the build several times, have a look online on Liquipedia.net, I think. Yeah, I think it's .net, and have a look at the Terran strategy section. They go in depth with Pulse build, which is an adaptation of Bomber's Wings of Liberty build, and that is essentially where the MMM strategy comes from. And Bomber does that little trick where he builds the barracks, then puts the SCVs in the refinery. It's little tricks like that that give you a little bit of extra time mining. And Day 9 TV, if you ever seen Day 9 do reviews of matches and things, he points that out massively. It's the macro. That's where the Terran strength is. In the mule, in swapping your buildings, in knowing exactly when to put SCVs in the right place. So you got to use that effectively. So yeah, please go through the video and slow it down. Make a note of each little thing, especially the counter strategies, because they're really important in TVT matchups, because when you're in TVT, it's hard. I mean, a lot of people think TVT is boring, but it's not. It is intense. When you're looking at two rows of armies just sitting there waiting to kill each other, it is really, really tense. They're sitting in the dark. They don't know if their enemy is just outside of tank range. Sorry, just outside of sight range, because the tank can shoot further it can see. So it's a really, really tense matchup, and knowing the counter strategy is very important. Knowing where you can cut corners and save the money is very important, because you want to be able to either have extra tanks on your opponent, you want to be able to have extra marine drops or marauders and stuff like that. It's a really, really hard matchup, which is quite interesting. Terrans are the easiest race to pick up and learn. They're the most simple race, but they're one of the there's only 3. I would say they're the hardest to master. Because with Protoss, you get a lot of diversity with your builds at the start. You can do some really easy rush tactics. With Zergs, not rush tactics with the Protoss, but with the cannon rush you can. No other race can do that. I mean, of course, with the Terran, you can build your bunkers up with a proxy barrack strategy, but it's not the same as a cannon rush, because it's automated. You don't need to spend the extra mineral in bloody Marines, or Zealots, should I say. Yeah, and it really is the hardest to master, because the macro is far more difficult. Some people would argue that the Zerg macro is more difficult, because the way they differ from the Terran, if you didn't know, is that the Terran can queue units before the first one's built, so they come out one at a time. That's relatively slow. The Zerg, however, they have lava just outside their base, and they morph into different units, and they always have 3 at any point, or they will quickly have 3 at any point. But they can improve that by having the queen inject larva eggs onto the hatchery, which then spawns 4 more larvae. And you can keep doing that until you have like 100 larvae in front of your base. So that's where the Zerg strength comes from, because at any point they click all the larvae, hold down Z, 100 Zerglings come out. Yeah. So the Terran differ because they can only build things one at a time. You have to cut corners, you have to manage time properly in order to master the Terran. And then with Protoss, their units are expensive, but they get the chrono boost, which as the longer the game goes through, it's just as powerful as the mule. And also, the Protoss don't have to sit there waiting for buildings to build. That's another thing that's unique with the Terran. The Terran, actually, I'm not sure if this is really important. The way they build buildings, because they each have their advantages and disadvantages, which are countered by the macro play, of course. Because the Terrans have to wait until their building is finished, but they get the mule to still mine whilst things are being built. So once you get the mule, you can actually start building multiple buildings at once. Whereas with the Zerg, they lose the unit that actually builds the building, but everything's cheaper. The Protoss, they they just slap a ball there, and a building will appear later. And once that ball is down, they just run off and carry on mining. They're mining with the same unit that just called the building in. So that counters a mule massively. Because if you think about it, if a Terran wants to build 3 barracks at once, that's 3 SCVs off the line, that's 360 minerals gone whilst you're building those buildings. Whereas the Protoss, if they wanted to build 3 buildings, they come off, they plonk the beacons down and just go back. In fact, they could do it faster than, they could call the buildings in faster than it would take, 3 SCVs. Because they just get that one probe, just go there, and he's back to mining. So, the Protoss have their advantages, and the Zerg have their advantages as well. Yeah, but Terran v Terran is definitely the hardest matchup. Terran versus Zerg is fun. It's a lot of fun. Terran versus Protoss it's annoying. The Protoss leads the match, and the Terran has to counter. Yeah. Thanks for watching. I feel like I've just waffled too much. Well, I hope it helps. If it does, I don't know, like the video, subscribe, go to YouTube, do it all there. And thanks.